And we are live. Thanks for
How's it
complimenting.
going, man?
I know it looks good. I know it didn't always look this good. So
It did not always look that good.
You know?
The flow is strong.
Fix this. Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. We're already fumbling out of the gate. But that's fine. Hey, greetings, my friend. It's been way too long.
It has been way too long.
Way too long. Way too long. Welcome to Happy Dance's Guide to the Revolution. It's so excellent to have you on the show.
Great to be here, man. For sure.
So before we get, I have a lot of things lined up for us. But before we do any of that, I got to give some shout outs. So bear with me. I got a few shout outs I got to make.
How do your thing, man?
My first shout out is to my great aunt Joni. She made a donation to the GoFundMe page. She's excellent. She rocks. She's basically like she's kind of like my grandmother because she's my grandmother's twin sister. And my grandmother died when I was a baby, so I never really knew her at all. But my Aunt Joni's been part of my life, and that's great. And I'm grateful for her, and it's so cool that she's supporting what I'm doing and that she's interested, and it's exciting, you know?
Yeah, totally.
Shout out.
How old is she?
I'm not gonna say. I'm not gonna say. She's young at heart, and that's
She's
what
young at heart. Got you. No, I love that. Yeah, like my I have some great aunts and my great grandmas, and they're all like, I love when they get involved. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's cool. And then another shout out to Meyer Salamidi, and he was my most recent guest on the podcast. He was here. I spoke with him about 10 days ago or so, and he made a contribution to the GoFundMe as well. So huge shout out to him. It was really fun to talk with him. I don't know if you caught that episode, but we got into blockchain technology. He works in the industry, secure contracts for big banks, and we talked about how to use blockchain or how we could use blockchain to redesign democracy and build in some more functionality to democracy. So that was really cool. And we talked about all sorts of other weird shit too. So it was a lot of fun.
Right on.
Shout out to him. And one last shout out is to my Aunt Judy, who's my mom's sister. She had given a contribution previously, but she's been like really engaging with me on the things I've been like. She's been watching the videos and like, connecting with me on some of the ideas, and it's been really fun to like talk with her about some of the things we're talking about on the podcast. So shout out Aunt Judy as well. Love all three of those people.
Right on.
Okay.
Well, I'm super honored to have the invite, man. Like, thanks for having me on.
Dude, you're the man. I'd love, everyone's been great so far. It's just been like a star-studded cast, one after the other, A+ people. So that's what I'm trying to do. So speaking of what I'm trying to do, I want to get your thoughts on the movement, what I'm trying to do here, the theme, the message, the idea. What do you think about it? Questions, comments, like what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm super interested to hear from like ground zero. I've been so like I just started at Amazon 4 months ago, and
I've heard of them.
I've just been in the zone, and it's I've been so work centric that I've let everything else drop. So I'd love to just hear from like ground zero.
Sure. I'll just give you like the summary piece first. Basically what I want to do is nonpartisan political reform, specifically using technology to give democracy back to the people, because the pieces are there. And I wrote up this little, what I call the Declaration of Interdependence kind of, it's not like
I saw that. Yeah.
And then the follow-up just kind of pointing to the examples such as Wikipedia, such as, blockchain, such as Facebook, like those three pieces combined, we can take democracy back. Like it's all right there,
100%.
So that's the main thing. And on one of the podcasts with Jerry, I think that was the second one, I got into like 3 specific examples of things that I think would be good to change. But ultimately what I want is ideas from people. I want to hear from people. If the system wasn't so rigid and we had the freedom to change it, what would it look like? How would it work? What pieces would go where, and who would, what would it look like? Use your imagination, That's kind of what I'm trying to challenge people to do and talk about with people, ultimately. Now, there's lots of things that intersect with that and all sorts of topics that are ongoing as well, but I really want to, that's kind of the grand vision, if you will.
For sure. I love the I think Tim Ferriss uses this, but what would this look like if this was easy, and kind of work backwards from there. So I hear you.
I like that. What would this look like if this was easy? Mm-hmm. So I wanted to write that down.
And no worries.
As well. So that's kind of the main idea. I'll hit you with a couple of them quick because I don't want to like redo them every time. The first two are pretty easy. I mean, I don't think there's any reason that we should have the Electoral College anymore. I think that's obviously outdated and stupid, and I think people would agree. If you just gave them a direct vote to get rid of that, people would vote to get rid of that. And obviously there's lots of institutional hurdles in the way of that, For
sure.
And maybe small states wouldn't really be about it, but I think ultimately if you look at the math, it doesn't really make sense.
100%.
So, and another one that I really like is making ranked choice voting the default voting system. I think this head-to-head divisiveness is not effective. I think it would be way better to have ranked choice voting, and it would bring people together rather than tear them apart. And I'm not fully researched on like where it's been implemented and how successful it's been, but I just think it makes sense to me mathematically, that it would just be a better solution,
It's interesting because I know like in I remember my engineering, what was it? I think it was my junior level engineering design class.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the professor talked about is like your approach to design should be ranked choice because it's the most efficient. So super interesting. I don't know why we wouldn't do that for politics too. Math
default.
For sure.
Default. The last one's a lot more complicated. It basically has to do with like replacing the Senate with experts, self-elected experts, creating basically categories of competency and allowing those categories to be represented at the highest federal level as like senators, not like your state senator, but your federal representation based on your areas of competency and expertise.
Got it.
And have that be working parallel with the House rather than just the Senate and House. And lots of reasons, but one is I think it's just a duplication of the House and a less good duplication, just the way it's structured,
For sure. I feel like the way things work right now, it's very much in serial. Like you have to do things like very methodical one at a time. It sounds like from this perspective, it would be more of like we can do both things in parallel. We have like the experts diving deep, and then we have like the politics that are fighting for the people. Whatever specific thing that your constituents want, the House will vote for that, or this other experts will dive deep and say, this is the science behind it, or this is what whatever. Right on.
Exactly. So, and those are like the three main ones that I came up with, but like less kind of concrete is I think we could challenge a lot of these policies or laws that give super obvious favor to one of the two main political parties. I think we can challenge them in the Supreme Court if we really did it correctly, like
all right.
Even the way that some of the primaries are set up in certain states, I think partly that'll help with the ranked choice voting thing, or like things like gerrymandering or like all these things that just stack the deck for the red and the blue team. I don't think we need any of those things anymore. We can get rid of all those things, I think.
On the topic of gerrymandering, did you see the I saw it on Twitter. Brittany Bennett might have like retweeted it, but it was like the gerrymandering type font.
Yeah,
did you see that?
No.
So, they took pictures of like gerrymandered. It's such a confusing word, but gerrymandered maps, and they overlaid that with text. So an A was like some weird district, maybe in like I'm gonna make this up, like North Carolina, that looks like an A, but you can see like how it's gerrymandered, and like a B is like the same thing, and C, but you can like have like a gerrymandered font that someone like made up.
Ridiculous it is.
Exactly, yeah. You can have like literally like 26 letters of the alphabet.
Oh my god. So I'm glad you brought up Brittany Bennett because that's one of the next things I want to talk about is ESW.
Yeah.
And just
it's like
yes, exactly.
Oh man.
That's what I was hoping you would say. So that's kind of one of the early things I try to do.
Don't make me get emotional for this. Like,
dude, we're gonna get emotional. I'm surprised I haven't cried on every single one of these so far. I cry afterwards instead. Alone. So like how we know each other. I always try to kind of front end that on these podcast episodes. So all the way back to ESW, which is Engineers for a Sustainable World National Conference at the University of Buffalo. I believe that was fall of 2011, but it could have been spring 2012.
Yeah, 2011, yeah.
2011, fall 2011. And I was there with my Penn State crew. And
you are?
You. And I was the VP at the time under Alex DeVoe. Shout out Alex DeVoe. What up, though? And I met you there because you were I believe you were the co-president at the time of U Buffalo.
Yeah, Calvin and I were like the co-chairs of the conference, and we were just like running like crazy. Like I remember the conference. ESW as a whole is fantastic. I mean, as you know, just I can't describe it how grateful I am for the organization, and because I think the biggest thing for me is almost like an identity thing. Is I felt like I was floundering in engineering school until I found a bunch of people that were weird, just like I was weird.
Yes.
But it was just normal. It was just like a bunch of people and everyone there is like super smart, super educated, and able to have conversations like this, and kind of just like elevated engineering for me. But yeah, Calvin Hollick and I, we were the
shout out Calvin Hollick. What up?
Oh yeah, Calvin.
I got to get him on here soon too. And Alex DeVoe, all you guys. Totally. But anyway, yeah.
But yeah, I remember like the conference was crazy. Like we were bringing, I forgot how many students came in, maybe like 170 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But we lost funding like maybe 2 months before, so we weren't sure it was going to happen. So I remember I came back to the University of Buffalo after my internship, and Calvin and I like looked at each other, and we're like, it was like late night. We're like, shit, we have to plan this conference, and we have to feed all these people, and like figure out where everyone's going to go. But yeah, and like it was great though, because like met you, Jordan, met like everyone. I mean, yeah, unreal experience.
It went pretty smoothly as far as I remember, so you guys did a great job.
I don't remember a thing. Like looking back, it's just like, I mean, like it's all blur because it was just like so crazy.
Yeah, that was my first ESW national conference, and I went to 5 or 6 of them overall, and that was the first time I met a lot of cool people.
Totally.
Rob Best, Alex Dale, Aaron Rose Briggs, you, Calvin, some of the OG homies there, at least from my perspective,
That will always be the OG, the OG ESW homies.
Yes, that was great. So it was funny you said you can't describe, how much ESW had an impact on your life, but which is ironic because that's exactly what I want you to do.
Totally.
You already started a little bit, but like I wrote some stuff here too, but I want to hear from you first. Like, obviously the like-minded people, but go ahead, give it a shot.
I think it's like engineering school for me was like really hard, like really, really hard. I think, especially going to state school, University of Buffalo, like it's a big school and you're thrown in to the mix with all of like the other people that are like, that also didn't try during high school that were able to get really good grades and make it to engineering school. And when I got to engineering school, it was like the level playing field. I'm like, oh shit, like I actually have to try and I have to like apply myself. And I struggled a lot like the first 2 years. It wasn't until I found ESW where it was like, these are my people. Like I can be vulnerable. I can say like, hey, I don't understand how to do this problem, and like have other people that can help me out. And then just like having that like sense of community, I think. And then how I was able to mature, like the skill sets that I learned in ESW were crazy. Like I still use them in today's world. Like it's like is my job like at Amazon or like even before that, just managing people and then like working with timelines and working with budgets. I learned all that in ESW. That was like where I was just given like, real world like application, which is crazy. Like I thought like the engineering world was all going to be, I was going to be like Tony Stark, making all these cool things. And I really started to learn, I really enjoyed the process. But
you're kind of like Tony Stark light.
Tony Stark light.
You even kind of got the look a little bit. You could probably be him in like the reboot in 15 years or whatever they decide to bring him back,
Without any money. It's like me and Tony Stark.
Yeah.
But yeah, like then ESW, like I feel super grateful because at the time Autodesk was a sponsor.
Yes.
For ESW, and I remember just being on a conference call with someone. Hey Puff, what's up? Our cat's going to join us.
Oh, I got to give one more shout out. Your cat just reminded me. We're going to get back to ESW. My lovely fiance Raven's cat Gizmo just passed away today.
Oh no, I'm sorry.
Poor guy. So shout out to Gizmo and Kitty Heaven.
We'll pour some on for the homies, Gizmo.
Yeah. He was a little gem. I loved hanging out with that little guy.
Right on. What do you think? You have anything to say? No, nothing. But yeah, so Autodesk was the sponsor of ESW, and they, I remember I was the annoying person that asked a ton of questions on this webinar that we had.
Mm-hmm.
And hey Puff, just want to.
You want them?
Just want a little parrot. And I ended up getting an internship from that phone conversation, and I feel like that really changed the trajectory of my professional career. So I'm super grateful for ESW for making those connections, and I'm always willing to give back. That's one of my favorite things to do is whenever University at Buffalo is hey, let's we need a mentor, we need anything like that. I almost wish they would ask more of us to say, hey, do you have any cool alums that could help? Yeah, that's in a nutshell ESW, and also just the cool people that I met, man. These are lifelong awesome friends, really cool people I can call up anytime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I pretty much agree 100%. I mean, it was this creative outlet with people who were trying to do similar things and kind of felt similar ways, and it was open-ended too. It wasn't here's your class project and here's your blah blah blah. It was everything was on you to figure it out. What do we want to do? How are we going to do it? Who do we need to talk to? And you're right; those are the same skill sets that you use today in your current job. And like you said, the friends that we made, whether it was in the Penn State chapter or later when we were working together on the leadership team, those are homies for life.
100%.
I mean, Jesus, I met Nicole through there and dated her for 4 years. I mean, that was a huge part of my life. You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I was thinking about the people and how to best describe them. They were intelligent, like you said. They were passionate, but they were also compassionate. They weren't. No one was there trying to take over the world and be what's that movie where he's the villain guy, the super villain? I think he's played by Steve Carell. Whatever that dude's name is.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I can't think of it. Yeah.
Despicable Me.
Yep.
Whatever that dude's name is. That nobody was like that at all. Maybe a little bit sometimes, but not really.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like it was all people that, saw the world as a bigger part, they saw themselves as a bigger part of this whole community. It's we want to, if we all contribute, we'll have this greater sense of good.
Mm-hmm. A shared grand vision, even if it wasn't always fully defined, it was we knew which direction we were trying to go.
Exactly.
And that's huge. Got to have an aim. You got to have your life. Yeah, your aim sort of defines your life in a way.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have that North Star. It's what drives you, what gets you up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
For me, on Sundays, it's the Buffalo Bills. Usually, it's unfortunate. So
I have the Bills on here. I want to talk to you about football later. We're gonna get to football. But I have something I can pitch to you, but we're gonna get there later. So then, that you had that experience at Buffalo, and I had my experience at Penn State, and then we were also involved in the national team or the leadership team or however it's branded these days, and that was for me also a positive experience, but it wasn't joyful in the same way that boots on the ground, in-person meetings, not being so jaded by the world yet, maybe. I'm not really sure, But that was valuable too, working digitally with a team, planning and trying to connect people and fundraising and all that was super, useful too. And like you said, with your trajectory with Autodesk, I mean, similarly, it was the same thing for me. I mean, it was a separate organization. It was NECA, National Electrical Contractors Association, but I was using my ESW office to run the NECA chapter,
Yep.
And I was using all my skills from leading the ESW chapter to lead the NECA chapter, and that's where I met the people who hired me out of college, That was cool.
Totally.
So, and I made friends through that group too. So it was all, I have so much to thank for it, But yeah, anyway, so we got on the leadership team and that was cool. And I kind of left in a not the best way, sort of. I mean, it wasn't super negative, and I take a lot of responsibility for it too. It
was hard though. Back to your point though. I mean, this is after we've been jaded with the real world,
mm-hmm.
And I think we didn't have that we had the community, but it wasn't as frequent. Like you couldn't just like pop in and like, vent to someone like person to person. It was like that virtual relationship. And it felt more dire in the sense of like we saw the strategic vision, like we were the people that were executing versus just like it felt like at least like my experience at University of Buffalo, like we were on the ground floor and like we could write whatever we wanted to. Whereas like the national was like, okay, let's like figure out how to get everyone together on this
right.
thing.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressure and a lot less, I don't know, fun or something.
Yeah.
Which is fine. That's part of adulting, I guess, right?
For sure.
But yeah, that could have ended better. I think part of it was like I was still trying to be in when I was like I wanted to be out too, So whenever you're like that, if you're not fully committed, you're never going to put forth your best effort,
Totally.
But I have no ill feelings towards the whole group. I mean, obviously they have a super like fond place in my heart forever, And
here, man.
I'm hoping I can connect with more of them and get them on the podcast and just kind of catch up on their lives and everything. I'm sure whatever they're doing, it's all really good stuff.
For sure.
Yeah, ESW, dude. Shout out, Engineers for a Sustainable World, people. Get to know them. I don't know what they're even up to these days. Who knows? They could be awesome or they could be diminished. I should touch base. Really.
100%.
Okay, so what are you up to now? Like last time I really checked in with you, I'm pretty sure you had just decided like which school you were going to go to for your MBA. So that must have been like 3 years ago, I guess, right?
Yeah, that's crazy. It was like 3 years ago. I was like, yeah.
And obviously we play fantasy football together and stuff, so we've touched base a little bit, but like really talk to you. It's been that long.
Yeah. Man, so that was like, 2017 in January when I like it was probably like literally 3 years ago exactly when I like hit the submit button on like the application process. Yeah, I mean, rewinding a little bit, like tying with the ESW theme, like Derek, Chung, and I, we started Canary Drones together, and it was a super eye-opening experience, man. And
yeah, tell me, sorry, I cut you off there.
Yeah, no worries. But just like trying to start something that didn't exist, and just also like that virtual dynamic where I was in Boston at the time and Derek was in LA and he was in San Diego.
Yeah,
was really hard, but it kind of like solidified that I wanted to go to business school. I don't know if you felt this way with the engineering God complex, when you look at other majors, which is unfortunate, but it's kind of how I felt, for better or for worse. Just looking at like business majors, I was like, oh, that's kind of a joke, which is unfortunate because like I ended up going to business school because I realized that is a whole nother skill set that I just wasn't privy to. But I know that that's like how I felt, which is a shitty way of like a shitty view of the world. Whereas it's like that engineer is like, oh, like we know like what's right.
I didn't feel exactly that way, but I know what you mean. I kind of felt like it was a skill set that I could just figure it out. It wasn't
totally.
Whether that's true or not, I still don't really know. You probably know better than I do now that you've gone through your MBA thing, but continue.
And yeah, so I mean, I just, when we were starting the company, we realized like you need to have that business aspect and reach customers and figure out how to get to market, and being able to, get those skill sets in an accelerated way. I thought that business school would be a good decision. And I didn't want to have like a watered down business school experience. So I only applied to schools that had a really analytical and quantitative approach, which is how I ended up at the University of Rochester, where it's an economic approach where you're like diving deep into data. Like I took like countless like programming classes, which is like interesting from a business school perspective. And then just like really not shying away from like the numbers. And so I loved it. And then spent 2 years there, loved it. It was a great experience. And then ended up interning at Amazon as a product manager within Amazon devices, and then received the full-time offer and decided to accept it. And now that's what I'm doing now. So I'm on the smart home team. So working on launching new hardware products for Amazon. So it's super exciting. I mean, it's kind of like exactly what I wanted to do. I mean, I see myself like long-term as starting another company, and the biggest weakness that kind of brought Canary Drones down was not having that go-to-market business plan. And so if I can work for a company for a couple of years and, learn how to take these products to market, I can apply that to the next company. And I'm hoping that it's in, like, I just have this like grand vision of starting a company in like Buffalo, New York, which is interesting. Like Derek Chung and I, we went to a Tony Robbins event, which is super weird and kind of spiritual. But
yeah,
I can, like, we can unpack a bit more of that. But
yeah, I want to hear. I do want to hear about that actually. You have to tell me about some Tony Robbins here in a bit.
But like in the same vein, like one of the processes that you go with is like you do something called Charles Dickens process, where it's kind of like the ghost of Christmas past and the ghost of Christmas future, but you envision the thing that you want the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I wanted the most, when I closed my eyes with like the 17 other thousand people that were in this like arena with you that you're like meditating with, it was super cool. Was like starting a company in Buffalo, and like I saw like a skyscraper going up, and it was like a clean technology company, and I was like, you know, being the change that I wanted to see in the world. And then like the part of the quote unquote Tony Robbins like Dickens process is like they take it away. So then he's like, imagine you didn't start that, and you just like you feel this like you just, I can't describe it other than just being ripped away from you. And so now I almost feel like it's like inceptioned into my brain where like I just like need to do this thing. So it kind of like solidified the whole, like, I want to start a company in upstate New York.
That's a powerful visual. I could see that being really like impactful, being there and really getting that in your head and then feeling like something was stolen from you.
So yeah, totally. It's like, it's the weirdest thing. Cause it's like, it's amazing what your brain can do. Cause like, these are all just like words and like, you're having this experience, but it was good, man.
Man. So the drones thing, I have drones on here in general. So let's hop to that now. We can back up to some of these other items. Do you see, first of all, I thought your idea with the drones, from what I remember, basically was like agricultural inspection, more or less.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I think I was just talking with my dad today. I think you probably agree. Drones are only going to be an increasingly important part of the economy, let's say.
Definitely. I would definitely agree with that.
What are some of the like the main ways that people are either using them that are new or coming out soon that you think could be really exciting and interesting way to use drones that you're aware of?
So I think there's like two sides of it. I think the inspection part of it is probably like the most mature part of it. And I think that's still like a huge opportunity. It's like inspecting power lines that you can't reach or like wind turbines and making sure they're all up to spec. There's companies that are starting, like I know there's a company in Buffalo that's working on doing visual inspections for commercial roofs. So you can basically get a free new roof. So if you inspect the roof, it's like it's not within warranty. So it falls on the actual roof company. So I think the whole inspection business is super, super interesting. From the, like, you know, the amount of online shopping, just like the Amazon had, like the amount of online shopping that's happening, there has to be a huge opportunity to just get things to people faster using drones. I don't know what that looks like.
I was thinking about like what the weight, like how effective it would be, because like when they're taking pictures and stuff, that's one thing, but like carrying actual weight, I don't know. They'll definitely be doing it someday, but I wonder when it'll be at a price point that makes sense, you know, whether it even, how much energy, like I don't know.
No, for sure. I mean, just like the physics, I mean, it's like, it's a ton of energy to, you know, like you said, to like have a payload of just a camera, but if your payload is a camera to sense the shit that's happening around here, plus your flip-flops that you need in 2 hours because you're impatient. I think the constraint there is probably the batteries, you know, is if the batteries become much more energy dense, yada, yada, yada. But I mean, at the end of the day, like there's going to be that barrier of the fixed wing aircraft versus rotorcraft. I mean, it's just, it's going to be a while before you reach the efficiency, if ever, of a fixed wing aircraft.
I wonder if it would make sense to use them in combination with things like autonomous cars as like to give another angle of support. Probably not, because they probably don't have the range of autonomous vehicles and stuff, but I wonder if that would make sense, or like traffic control, traffic mapping. I guess they have street lights or street cameras and stuff. I don't know. I'm sure there's like a million ways to use them, you know?
I mean, you got a point there. I mean, like I think right now we're thinking of transportation in 2D, but soon it's going to be 3D once we like have like quote unquote like Jetsons flying cars, and like very well like drones will be a part of like the directional, like you're not going to have like a traffic light up there, you're just going to have a drone that's like floating up there.
We'll just travel through the internet, we're just going to upload ourselves and then just pop out on the other side.
Dude, it's going to happen. We're all going to be in the Matrix. Like
maybe we already are in the Matrix,
You are the one.
What if it's a simulation?
It's a very, very real possibility, dude.
I know I'm goofing, but it actually is a simulation technically, right? Because our brain is simulating reality, and we're perceiving what our brain is simulating. So, in a way, it is a simulation.
Yeah, I think maybe the question is it a coordinated simulation? That's like, right. That's like the moment.
Okay, so. We talked about imagination before when we were talking about, who were we just talking about? Oh, Charles Dickens, and like imagining with Tony Robbins in that piece. And it reminds me of your quote. I wrote down this quote because I think about it a lot. I think it was your signature on your email for a long time. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But it gives
man who has no imagination has no wings.
Yes. Muhammad Ali.
Yeah.
Dude.
But like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest of all time. If not the, right?
100%.
That's such a brilliant quote, because like a man doesn't have wings. Don't be ridiculous. It's like exactly. That's
right. Totally.
You do sort of. If you can use your imagination, you can believe something. You can transform. You can do things that don't seem possible, which is weird to say, but imagination is key.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think it all feeds into like your ability to like ask questions too. Sorry, like Puff is freaking out. Sorry, Puff. But like almost like the answer to every. I don't look like ridiculous. Like hanging out with
That's great.
She's doing fine.
Yeah.
But like the answer to everything that you need is just unlocked in someone else, or is like locked in someone else's head. So if you can ask a really good question, you can get there. And another like article that I just read too was on Creativity by Isaac Asimov, the science fiction writer, and it goes into like what makes creativity, and it looks into, it's basically like the intersection of two expert. If you're an expert in a field and start reading about other things, like you're going to make connections. And his whole thesis was like that's what Darwin did. It's like Darwin was an expert in. I'm probably going to butcher this, so keep me honest, but he was like an expert in like animal. Something with animals, and then he read something about plants and was able to connect like the theory of evolution. But it's just like fascinating, like how like and I think his article or his essay was called like "What is creativity?" or what is a creative process or something like that. But yeah, but to your point, I'm kind of rambling here. Imagination is like it's super important. It's like what keeps you excited about things. It's like imagine what we could do.
Yes. And to bring us back to kind of the mission of this movement, it's like I'm basically asking people to use their imagination. It's like we're not limited to the system that's in front of us. We can create whatever we want to create as long as we can first imagine it.
Totally. Imagine if things weren't as divisive as they are now. Imagine if you could have a conversation with anyone and not worry about like what are their politics? It's like, oh, like is my Uncle Joe super left leaning, or is like Aunt Susie super like conservative, and like can I not bring things up? And what if we just talked about like ideas and what was like the best thing to move forward?
Yeah. So I see you back to this Muhammad Ali thing. I see you with imagination. You're a guy with imagination, as far as I'm concerned. And part of that's vision. So you talked a little bit about wanting to create this business in Buffalo. So, and being at Amazon now, but I have the question is, what's next for you? So maybe that is what's next for you, but what's next for us all? Where does all of this go? Do you have any idea? Like what, because we're kind of I feel like we're in a spot right now that's like anything could happen. We're at such like a critical point where it could go so many different directions. What direction are we going to go? Like, what's going to happen next? Any idea?
So I feel like I'm an optimist, and I see us see us hopefully I think it's super important for us to just realize, like, us being like the economic systems that currently exist, that we need to start accounting for all of the externalities that we haven't been, from like pollution to climate change to X, Y, and Z, that just aren't written into companies' bottom lines, and start addressing that. Because I feel like that's going to be the quickest mechanism in terms of like climate change. And because that's the thing that I worry about the most, is like I panic when I see Australia, literally the entire continent, on fire. It's like, it's overwhelming to me, especially because like I feel like I can't do anything about it. But I know that I can. So that, like, to answer your question, like what's next for us, and like how, like what's the imagination? I think it's like, yeah, I see us going one of two ways. It's like, it's very binary at this point. You know, like we're getting to the point, like the more we move in time, it's like we're either going to succeed or like we're going to go into some like apocalyptic thing. And I'm confident that we'll get there to mitigate things, but I think it's going to be really tough. And I think the way to get there is, with the other kind of green, is like really going after people's corporations' bottom lines. You know, it's like what motivates them is like the responsibility to the shareholders. So let's make, you know, I don't know if it's legislation or what it is, to just make it feasible for them, or just give them a reason other than just the feel-good reason, because they obviously haven't done it over the past, 100 years, to do those things. That's not really like a concise, coherent thought, but
no, it is though. It is. I mean, the main thing I think you said there was figuring out a way to account for the externalities, because I think that's a major failure in the current system. And I think a major failure in government is not taking full responsibility for the commons, for the externalities, the things that people get away with that hurt everybody. Like, I think that's part of their role and one of their most important things that they should be doing.
Totally.
And I know there's ongoing efforts and there's international efforts to combat climate change, and I know people are working on it, but we got to keep working on it, and we got to lead by example, and make the proper sacrifices, and take less now to have more later. Ultimately, it's a game of, this greed's going to burn us all in the end, no pun intended,
For sure.
It scares me too. And it's the warmest decade on record. This is not a joke, It's not like it's real, It's like, it's
100%. Yeah.
It's not like it's not a political, like,
not a feeling. It's not like what you think. It's like, this is really shitty and we need to move now and start fixing things.
Yeah. And just to kind of bring religion into it, I mean, most religions, their whole like focus, maybe not their whole focus, but it's a common piece of most religions to do what you can to reduce suffering.
Yeah.
Because life is suffering. Suffering is inevitable, but reducing that suffering, it's like everyone can agree that that's a good goal and something we should all be striving for. And if it goes bad, it's the amount of human suffering and not only human suffering, lots of suffering, is going to be unprecedented.
For sure. I mean, we've already seen it with like 500,000 or 500 million animals like dying in Australia. It's like crazy. But back to like all religions too. Like, I mean, if you look at the big three religions being like Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, all of them have built-in, like, almost like stoic type philosophies, where like you have in Christianity, you have Lent, you have Ramadan, and Islam you have I'm blanking on the dinners that you have on like Friday, Shabbat. You have like Shabbat, where you're just like you're just kind of like putting yourself in like the worst case scenario, like that suffering. I was like, what is the state that I most fear the most? To kind of remind you of that, to move forward with, to just remind you like what that suffering feels like. Mm-hmm. And I almost feel like, I don't know if we're missing that, or if more people need to take that on. It's like, it's about the whole system. It's not just about maximizing your individual self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I worry sometimes too that because we're biologically, we're sort of tribal, whether we can like finally accept that the whole earth has to be the tribe in order for it to work.
Totally.
You know, I know we kind of maybe we're programmed to operate in these smaller tribes and to like help our friends and kill our enemies, but like that's not going to work really, you know, unfortunately.
Sure.
I know we'd love to kill each other, but just it's not going to work, it seems like to me.
Dude, so like part of like the sci-fi nerd in me just really wants space travel to happen, only so we're not killing each other, but like we start like unifying to like look at other races, which is fucked up, but it's just like that's almost like how humanity is geared towards. It's like exploring and just continually pushing things forward.
Yeah. And there's like conspiracy theories around that too, that like all these alien movies are sort of prepping humanity for the inevitable, you know?
Yeah.
And that the Illuminati, in quotes, the Illuminati will use that event to kind of seize control of the whole thing rather than having kind of consolidated pockets of control, or not isolated pockets of control, you know? So I don't know if that shit's true, but I just never, it's hard to know what's real, you know? It really is sometimes. Sure. But aliens, man. Should we talk about aliens? I didn't prepare to talk about aliens, but
we can talk about aliens. Dude, I've been reading a lot of sci-fi. So.
Aliens. All my dad, like my dad's watching like a TV show. It's like Ancient Aliens, or it's like UFO Files, whatever. Man, he's super into that shit. It's awesome.
Love it.
Yeah. Okay, what do I have for you next here? Let's go back to democracy.
Yeah.
And imagination. I brought up a couple of the ideas. What do you think about those? Do you have other ideas for kind of reshaping democracy, things that you've read about, things that you thought about, just a better way for it to function? I know we talked about figuring out a way to like monetize the externalities, or, you know, account for them in some way. But like other than that, any thoughts on that?
So I think like figuring out like the externalities is a huge part. Two really good books that I just read on housing specifically was Evicted, which is an awesome book that goes into housing, and it basically follows a African American family, a white family, and then a landlord, and then it just talks about what an eviction means to, like, if you're black or if you're white, and how different it is, and then the point of view of like a slumlord, like someone that is just like knows how to abuse the system. It was just fascinating to see that. And then that was the Evicted book. And the second really good book that I read was called The Color of Law, which really talks about like the color of law. L-A-W.
L-E-W?
L-A-W, like the color of law.
Oh, law. Got it.
But the book really goes into the systemic racism that has happened throughout the U.S. history. And it was absolutely like fascinating to read, and like just like from like in World War II, when housing was being built for factory workers, like the white people were put in a quote unquote better neighborhood, and African Americans would be put in a totally separate neighborhood that was even like, you know, maybe an hour away. So you'd have 2 hours lost to commuting. So just like this inherently systemic things that are going on. I don't have like a clear thought on like how we could address that, but I think housing is a huge issue that needs to be solved with, I think, from a governmental level. I mean, if you look at areas like, I mean, just living in Seattle now, like seeing like crazy amounts of like homeless in San Francisco and like all these cities, I think serious thought needs to be put into like housing policies that currently exist, and how that's supported. And Evicted kind of gets into that. It's like how people were using housing subsidies and like to benefit like significantly from monetary perspective. So I'd love to see something happen with housing. I think another huge thing that I would love to see is, and I'm not well researched on this,
sure,
I would love to be, is and that's the unfortunate thing that we see like in today's world with like, I see a Reddit post and like, is just reading the comments good enough, or is it like reading the article good enough? You know, it's like, you know, what constitutes me as like having an opinion? Like, when should I have an opinion?
Yeah. We talked about this in my most recent episode with Meyer, specifically that like how complicated everything is and how it's impossible to be an expert at everything, you know? So if you're interested, check that out, and I can explain some of it if you want, but it is definitely a huge problem, you know?
Totally, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like another thing I would love to see is I think our like agriculture policies is really fucked up. It's like really focusing on from a sustainability perspective and even like economic perspective, you have all these massive farms, like the corporate giant farms that receive like billions of dollars of subsidies. And it's super interesting. Like they got more money from President Trump than the auto industry did in the bailout. And that's like fucking, and you have to like double check that number, but like that's like,
wow,
that's like fucking mind blowing to me. You know, it's like, and that's something that people aren't even talking about, that like that much money is going to farmers. And that is all stemming from the tariffs, and the farmers were affected the worst with these tariffs and just adhering to the base. But just like having like why is that happening? Like, how is a policy like that? Why is no one talking about it?
Wow. Well, you know me, I'm kind of like a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. So why is no one talking about that? One, probably because it's not sexy. Two,
farmers in Iowa, god damn it.
All these people know that they have to win those farming states.
Totally.
They all know that. So no one's going to question giving money to the farmers.
Totally.
You know? So it's like part of their play probably to, well, we're going to not bring too much attention to that one because it's part of everyone's game, sort of. You know, you don't want to be anti-farmer.
For sure.
You know, fortunately. But so let's go back to the housing thing for a second, because I think that's a really tricky issue too, you know? And I don't have a solution for it, but it's clear it's like a problem, right? It's like, but it's tricky because like you don't want to be anti-human. Like these are people too, and if they want to be on the street, and is that their right to be on the street? And you know, are they hurting anybody? I don't know. Sometimes for sure, you know. Are they hurting themselves? Is it hurting the community? You know, these are questions we have to ask, and like really, because if you can, I think a part of anything that's like overly complicated, to me, it comes down to competing values, right? Because we value people and we value freedom, but we also value like clean spaces and sanitation, and you know, and it's like, what do we value more? Like, how do we take all these values and what's like the ultimate value, and how do we make decisions based off that value instead of getting bogged down by all of the cumulative truth, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good way to put it. And I hadn't thought of it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this book just like, it really like shook me up, just like what it's like being like a single mother, moving from house to house and going from like home to home just to make sure that your kid's in like the right school district. You know, it's like just like it's like a generational unfair advantage or disadvantage that you're put at. And I don't know the answer to it. I just know it's like something's got to give there.
And it's super important too. It's like from psychology, it's part of Maslow's like hierarchy, you know?
Yeah.
Food, water, shelter. Like it's your home base, you know? It's like, how can you do anything well if you don't have a base to go to reset and like feed your family and like get clean and rest, and like how are you expected to do anything useful?
Totally.
You know? It's crazy.
So on the same thought of like having a home base, it just reminded me like your trek, man.
Dude,
I'd love to hear about it, because like I attempted to do some of the long trail, and I made it 4 days and 15 miles, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
And I wish I had done like the full LT, but like I'd love to hear about like your travels, man. Like, what was your home base? Tent?
Dude.
Was it shelters? Like, what was it?
It was more epic than I could even begin to describe, you know? Like, I've forgotten more things that I did on that trail that are like cooler than most people will ever do almost. That's like genuinely how I feel. It was like so incredible to just be out there and like to push yourself and to just rely on yourself and to rely on other people sometimes.
Trail magic. Yeah.
Yeah, trail magic. Beautiful trail magic. Beautiful people. like really connecting with people, like away from the TVs and the noise and having time with your thoughts. And it was like truly a life-changing experience, like just like ESW, just like, anything like that for me,
For sure.
But home base was, I started off in a hammock.
Nice.
And I kind of bounced back and forth between that and the shelters during the early phases. And then I met my lovely now fiance, and it didn't take long for me to like send my hammock home and get my 2-person tent. And then we shared that for like the next, I don't know, 1,500 miles or something. I'm not exactly sure. So that was like home base, but we still slept in shelters sometimes too,
Yeah.
Dude, it was awesome. So like having just like your backpack, it was just she and I and our backpacks, and everything's in the tent at night, and that's all you get, And that reminds me, we were talking about before with like the suffering thing, like when those religious practices that like take things away from you like on purpose, so you can experience what it's like to not have them, and kind of the new perspective that you get from that, and also realizing like you don't need that much to not suffer. To not suffer severely, you know what I mean? Like, sure, if you're hungry, you're suffering. If you're tired, you're suffering. If you're, but like, even that's like, meh, you're good. Right. But I'm still hurting from some of it too. Like my hip, I don't know. It was brutal. It was brutal. Dude, it was beautiful though too.
I'm super proud of you, dude, because like it's unreal. Like my 50 miles that I did in the 4 days that kicked my ass. I can only imagine how long were you out there for?
It took me almost 8 full months.
Awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, I'd never done anything like it before either. Like I've literally backpacked 3 or 4 days of my whole life prior to that.
Yeah.
And I spent 8 months in the woods and covered 2,200 miles.
It's unreal. What was your favorite state or your favorite part of the trail?
The Smokies were really incredible. They were kind of magical, Part of it's like, I'm not sure. Like, what am I trying to say? They were probably just as beautiful as other parts, but it was the combination of how beautiful they were and like how new it was. Like I think that was in like the 100 to 200 mile range, 150 to 200 miles.
Yeah.
In that range of the trail. So you're only, I was probably only out there 3 weeks or whatever by the time I hit the Smokies,
For sure.
So it was like really new and like crazy and cool and like beautiful and like you're motivated, and that was really, and that's where I met my fiance Raven, and it was incredible.
Got you. Right on.
Yeah, but up north was beautiful too. Like Maine was truly like it's untouched. Like you're going through like Jersey and Pennsylvania and shit, and there's like graffiti on some of the rocks and stuff. Up there in Maine, it's like there's nobody up there.
Yeah.
It's like
it's just you.
Just in the middle of nowhere.
And so what did you do for like resupply? Did you have like shipments, or did you like go into town, or mix of both?
I messed with the shipments in the early days, but I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't really worth the effort.
Yeah. You go off trail and you have to like pick it up. And,
Hitchhike. Yeah. We hitchhiked.
Gotcha.
So you make a plan to cover a certain amount of distance over a certain amount of time, and you buy the amount of food to kind of cover that distance. And then when you get to the next spot, you re-inventory. Hopefully you haven't eaten every single thing that you had. Maybe sometimes though, if you're doing it right, you're coming in pretty light,
Totally.
You don't want to be coming in too hungry either,
Right.
So you catch a ride in the town, you get a big old cheeseburger or whatever you're kind of craving, and you go to the grocery store and you get your stuff, and depending on how tired you are, maybe you head right back out and camp somewhere, or maybe you get a hostel and get showered and get a breakfast the next day too, It just depends.
For sure. And how many pounds was your pack? Like, did you like start out heavy and drop a lot?
For sure. Yeah, it was probably like 40 pounds when I started, and some people get it down in like the teens and stuff, but I think my lowest was probably like 25,
Yeah.
But like, yeah, leaving fully loaded from town with like food and water, like towards the middle, towards the end, it probably was still 30 pounds though.
For sure. And you can feel it too. And would you do for water? Were you just doing like aqua tabs, or did you have like or Aquamire, or did you have like filters?
Filters.
Yeah.
I used different filters and ended up with the Sawyer filter.
Yeah. that's what my brother had. We were like experimenting like Sawyer, and like I was in Aquamire.
Yeah.
I got eaten up with like black flies when I was doing it because like he just like grabbed the water and like went, and I'm like, oh, I gotta like take like and do the chemistry whatever, like pour it in.
Yeah, it was beautiful too. Sometimes you'd find like a spring coming right out of the mountain, and you just be like, I'm just drinking this straight, man. Like nothing's gonna get in there. And now I say that, and people are gonna drink it and end up dead, but
right. Yeah. But I also had the hammock. I had the hammock tent, and it was like super clutch to have that. Like I felt like a bear burrito sometimes, like especially like when I was in Vermont. But
yeah, I like that too. It was like I didn't really, switching to the tent. I don't want to say it was a downgrade, but it was nice to like have all you be elevated and not have so many pressure points.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, right on, man. Well, it was a little bit of a tangent, but like the home base just reminded me of just like I remember like every day after granted I was out there for 4 days, but like the tent or like the hammock, that was like my home base that I could just like go back to and like feel safe in. And the whole housing thing is like every single person needs that,
Yeah.
The consistency, like whatever that is.
Yeah. And having that home base on my back there for a while gave me some a new perspective and respect for, just having a roof over your head, like my dad letting me kind of spend time in his house or, renting an apartment or whatever you're doing, like you should be grateful that you have a spot.
Totally.
Okay, so I have some technology pieces on here if you want to talk about more technology, or we can get into football because I have a football piece I want to talk to you about.
Let's do tech and then we can do football.
All right, deal. So I have AI, autonomous cars, drones, cryptocurrency, blockchain. What are you into these days? What's anything or something else scratching like that you really think is exciting and cool and maybe could it somehow be involved with either democracy or just kind of sustainability?
I think that's a good question. I think that AI is something that's just becoming almost like more and more normal, and that's kind of like super fucking terrifying to me.
Yeah,
like the especially like the like deep fake is so normal. Like you're just like, oh, like is that a real video or I don't know, or it's like, and it's almost like it's weird how it starts. It's like people that are trying to make money on showing their titties on Instagram. It's like super photoshopped, but it's just like a deep fake. It's like it's not real. I think like that's like that doesn't really apply to democracy, but I think it's something we have to worry about.
I mean, yeah, it does. Like you could have a bot run for president for all we know.
Totally.
Maybe not yet, but that's not that far in the future where you could totally just like fake that whole thing.
I think like one of the next interesting pieces is going to be virtual reality. And like eventually like people are going to be so compelled to not ever unplug and just like be in this virtual reality. And that's going to open up like a whole nother like wild west of everything. I don't know what that looks like.
Have you read Ready Player One?
Yeah, great book.
I really thought they did a good job of kind of imagining what that would look like and how it really was just like it became the most important part of not only everyone's lives, but like the economy and the world. Like power was consolidated in the Matrix or whatever they were calling it, the Oasis.
Yeah. No, I 100% feel that, and it's kind of scary because I feel like that's what Facebook is trying to do, low key, with Oculus. It's like people already go to Facebook all the time. Like that's like the one place they go to, and then I feel like soon they'll just go to once Oculus gets really good, that will be the hook. It'll be with games and stuff, and then you'll have like a loading screen, and then you'll have like little games where people are playing with each other and interacting, and then you're just in the fucking Matrix. Like,
yeah.
But I think that there's like a lot of like, I don't know what'll happen there.
I try to remind myself too with all these things that it's a tool. It's like a hammer. Like, yeah, you can hit yourself in the dick with a hammer all day if you want to.
Totally.
But it's not. The hammer is not necessarily bad. It's like if these tools become accessible to us, like how are we going to use them? How is it going to transform how we interact with people? Is it how are you going to wield it? And I guess the real answer is people are going to do all sorts of different things. You know?
Sure. Yeah.
Just got to hope that most of it's good, I guess.
Yeah. No, fingers crossed on all that. I mean, maybe it'll help with like sustainability because people will be traveling less. They'll literally just be plugged in, like sitting in a single room and not traveling a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
I think from like a technology perspective, like augmented reality is going to happen way faster than virtual reality, and that's going to move things. It's just going to speed up the way we interact with everything. Like especially from like a workplace, you know, it's like you have all this like information like on your screen, or like you're like assisted, and you can see like all these stats.
Like, have you seen the latest Spider-Man movie, the one that came after Endgame?
No.
That's kind of obviously Stark has it in his suit too, but he ends up giving kind of Peter Parker the glasses that
cool.
Super smart glasses, you know, with not what's I forget what the Jarvis, but a different form of Jarvis, you know.
Got it.
That's not that far off. I mean, really.
No, not at all, dude. Not at all. What else is going? I think like applications that are like super useful,
mm-hmm.
like blockchain is definitely there. I'm definitely a little bit out of the game after from like 2 years ago when Derek got me super into it.
Yeah.
But I was actually at a conference called Net Impact, which is kind of like the ESW in the MBA world.
Mm-hmm.
And I met this guy that was started a company called BanQu, BANQU, and they were using blockchain for payments on mobile phones to track the supply chain of agricultural goods. So typically you have a giant middleman. Like if you're like what's a good example? Like a cocoa bean farmer or a coffee bean farmer, mm-hmm. You bring your 20 kilograms of coffee to someone that's going to buy that coffee or that cocoa beans, and they could potentially say it was only 18 pounds and pay you for 18 pounds. And then they're going to like distribute that all the way. And then they're going to sell it to like another reseller. And like, there's always like middlemen, but with like a blockchain type scenario, you could have the actual farmer getting paid right away, you know, for those 20 kilograms. It's like you weigh it, it's 20 kilograms. It's like immediately like locked into the supply chain of the blockchain. And you can see every time that like coffee changes hands, goes back to like, you know, exactly where we're sourced from. And like that, the economics of it is also going directly to it, so to that woman or to that family, and eliminating all those middlemen.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was fascinating. I think that there's like blockchain type applications like for like supply chain. I'm sure like just like brainstorming, you could probably do that with like I don't know if it's voting, for like voting security.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know what other like applications it might have. Yeah, I mean, it'd be funny to like attach that to like an idea. Like, so if some small bill happened in like, you know, a small town in Pennsylvania and became like a big bill, you could kind of like see, or like a national bill, and you could see like the history of like where
like back to the example of like ranked choice voting, like you can map the spread of that.
Exactly.
It was implemented here in this city first, or, you know, and then this county adopted it, and then this state adopted it, and then these other states adopted it, blah, blah, blah. And you can watch the spread of that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess like those are the things that the technology things that I'm thinking about. It's you know, it's AI, which is kind of like, you know, getting scary with like deep fakes. And also just how normal it is, man. Like it's crazy. And then there's, you know, I think there's a ton of really good applications for blockchain. It's just so funny that people think blockchain and they think Bitcoin and they think crypto and they think games, they think Lambos, they think, you know, the crazy subreddit of r/Bitcoin where I'm going to make it $1 bajillion for doing nothing.
Right. It's not what it is.
Yeah, no. And then like virtual reality, I think that's gonna be super interesting. I don't know when that hits. I remember this is like another tangent, like back to autonomous cars. I think that could be a potential game changer for sustainability. And I think Brittany Bennett disagrees with me on this, but I would love to chat with her about it and just hash it out. But I think you could potentially have people working in autonomous cars. Like it's gonna change transportation. So instead of like having a car to go from A to B, you're gonna have an office that goes from A to B. So like if I'm like a consultant going from like city A to city B, instead of taking a flight, I could potentially go like slower and use a car because I'm not losing my productivity. I'm still like, typing in and, and working remotely. And I also think that you could potentially also have, less incentive to move farther away. Like you just like be able to, hop into like a remote car and like start working. So I'd love to just dive into that as like an engineering problem. It's like, what will autonomous cars do to, and this ties into housing too, is like, how will that change housing and how people like want to live and distribute themselves and how will they work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can tie into, I'm not sure if blockchain would help with this, but it probably would, like prioritization of transportation. Like this is a heart transplant. This is like, red level priority or whatever would be the top level, and this is like somebody's going to the park or somebody is traveling for business, but they don't even need to be there till tomorrow, and you can just kind of rank order everything based off of like a logic prioritization algorithm of some type, and make it safer and less stressful for everybody. And it's sky's the limit.
It's super interesting too, because I think that with autonomous cars, you have the potential to turn entire highways into basically trains. So you could have like an entire lane that's going like 45 miles an hour or like whatever is the optimal speed, put all like daisy chain together, just drafting on each other, like, and just more efficient, going slower, but it would still get there faster because for better or for worse, like you won't have like a human that needs to rest. You'll be able to just have a truck that or a box that just like ships off to somewhere else.
Right.
But that's also terrifying to me is like, I don't know. I feel like we need to start worrying about AI from a policy perspective because we're going to have this immediate, like we've always changed like work, like, the same jobs you've had 100 years ago aren't the same ones that 50 years ago and the same ones now. Like if someone told you 100 years ago that you're going to have a social media, strategist, they'd be like, what the fuck is he even talking about?
Yeah.
It's someone that's going to make sure that someone doesn't talk bad about you on a little glass rectangle. I'm like,
the black.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think that like the retraining is going to be interesting. Is like you're going to have this like massive need to retrain a lot of people, and this is coming super fast, like super hot, like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and it's a different transition than like the horse and buggy to the car, the car to the autonomous car. But it's like there's going to be this moment of time and coming real soon where both operate, but that's not going to be forever. Like people don't get around horses anymore. It's like that transitionary period might be a year, it might be 10 years, it might be 50 years. I don't really know.
Totally.
But there's going to be that limbo period. Like I was laughing about my Chevy Volt that I sold now. It's kind of like this Frankenstein car. Like that, people are going to look at that. That car should be in a museum 100 years from now. Like this car has both.
Right. For sure. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
They burn dinosaurs in this car. It's like.
Yeah. All right, you want to talk some football, buddy?
Yeah, man, let's do it.
Okay. So obviously, we don't want to talk about your Bills. They had a rough playoff outing.
We can talk about the Bills, man, because now I know what feelings feel like. I know what it's like to have skin in the game in a playoff football situation. So it feels terrible, and it makes me feel alive, which is good.
And we probably don't want to talk about fantasy football because I just won 2 years in a row. No big deal. I don't want to brag or anything.
I know.
Plus, you rejected my trade offer. But really smart on your part to do that.
I saw what you're doing there.
Yeah. So, what I want to talk to you about is nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with a rule change that I think would be beneficial and more exciting and all sorts of good things. And I've been calling it the Schiano proposal, and I think that's what it's called to my knowledge. Are you familiar with that at all before I start explaining it?
No, not at all.
Okay, so it's named that because I think Coach Greg Schiano, I forget where he was. He was with the Dolphins, he was with the Jets or something. I don't even know where he is now, but his name somehow got tagged to this. He must have proposed it originally or been involved. Okay, anyway. It's basically what it is you replace kickoffs with an automatic 4th and 15 from your own 35. So after you score, instead of like putting the ball in this goofy tee that gets like blown over by the wind, in this play that's unlike any other play in the game, the kickoff, instead it's still your ball, but it's 4th down, 15 yards to go from your own 35. So in most scenarios throughout the game, 4th and 15 from your own 35, what do? You're
going to punt.
You punt. So it effectively replaces it with a punt, right? So a couple reasons why I think this would be an improvement. I don't know how much you care about these. There's different reasons to care about it, and we'll just hit them in a kind of a random order. Player safety.
Yeah. Kickoffs are so violent.
They're almost twice as likely to result in a concussion, and I forget how. Twice as likely to result in concussion, and also more likely to result in other non-head injury.
Right.
So they're more dangerous for starters. Kickoffs are also kind of boring. They're one of the most boring plays in the whole sport. A lot of times it's just a touchback, so everyone runs down the field and sort of an anticlimactic ending that kind of looks goofy to people who don't watch football. They're like, "What is that? What happened there?" They don't,
right. It's very ceremonial. It's like
yes, and people still get hurt even when it's a touchback. Like the team that's receiving the ball doesn't know that it's a touchback. Like you have to play it out as if it's not a touchback. So there's still risk for injury even when the play ends in an unceremonious, anticlimactic fashion of the touchback. Okay. So additionally, even when there are exciting plays on the kickoff, they're not even that exciting. Like someone breaks a tackle and goes a little farther than usual and gets tackled, or they break they hit a hole and they're fast enough that they go to the house and it's exciting and everyone cheers. But is it really it's not that exciting, and they kind of all look the same anyway. I mean, they're so rare and they all look basically identical. Especially if you I watched this YouTube video where the guy mapped them all. And it's the same route. It's whoop, you can see it. If you watch football as many times as I have, you know what the route looks like.
Right.
You get to the sideline and it's a race,
Totally. I'm sure you could map it as a function of excitement. It's you have 100 kickoffs. Every two of them are returned for touchdowns. That's a excitement factor of X. Yes. But then you have 98 of them that are touchbacks. So the average excitement level is a 4 out of 100.
Right. So. And the ones that aren't touchbacks and aren't scores, most of them end up in more or less the same spot anyway.
Right. I don't 22-yard line, 25-yard line, whatever.
80% of the time, or maybe even more than that, 95% of the time, you end up somewhere between the 15 and the 40. And your chances of scoring don't even go up or down that dramatically in that range. You still have to drive a pretty significant amount of the field in order to be in scoring range.
Totally.
So even that doesn't matter that much. So I think punts are more exciting. A lot can go wrong in a punt. There's a lot of basic things you got to be able to execute as a football team to either successfully execute a punt or receive a punt. You gotta line up on time. You gotta not get any false starts. You gotta long snap the ball accurately. That guy's got to catch it. He's got to drop it. He's got to kick it. Someone's coming at him to block it. It could be blocked and taken to the house. It could be tipped and not go that far. It could be a bad punt. You can just kick it, 20 yards. Yeah. It could be a great punt. It can go 70 yards. The guy going to catch it, he could go be risky and not get a fair catch and get popped, or he could go for a fair catch and and drop
it. Yeah.
Drop it. And it gets the ball changes hands that way, you know?
You could fake it.
You can fake it, you know?
You can even go for it if it's 4th and 15
go
too,
for it.
You know?
15, you can line up on offense and say, fuck it.
The onside kicks this year have been abysmal. It's been horrendous this year. So that's a whole other dynamic that's not addressed.
Right. The onside kick that's one of the next things I have on here. It's a silly play. If the kickoff itself is silly, the onside kick is twice as silly. You know, it's looks ridiculous. It's extra dangerous. It's so completely random that it kind of rewards a team for something that's like doesn't even mean they're a good team. If you got an onside kick, like it means you got a lucky bounce, sort of. Totally. You know. Granted, I'm sure there's like kickers who are better at it, but like, is this like a kicking? Is this an onside kick competition or is this a fucking football game? You know, like what are we trying to do here? You know, I missed a couple things here. So we got okay. So then end of game scenarios. You're also more exciting there. Let's say you're down 10 and you score and there's 2 minutes left. Well, you don't have to do a stupid onside kick. You just have to go for it on 4th and 15 and get it. You know, and like if you're a good enough offense that you can get it, or the defense makes a stupid error and makes a penalty, then it's your ball. You know, the game's back in your hands. Or like the other way around, like you're up 10 and you get scored on. You know, well, you either got to stop them on 4th and 15, or if there's enough time, you at least got to be able to field the punt properly. You know,
all right.
Call a fair catch, or maybe they score on you, and now you were up 4, but now you're down 3. Well, like now you got to get a block. You know, or you got to figure out a way to take this to the house, or you got to, you know, maybe you send everybody to block and you don't even put anybody back to receive it if there's not much time at all left, you know. It just creates so many more dynamic and exciting ways for the game to go in that one play, rather than like, oh, the ball blew off the tee because the wind was blown. Now we got to bring somebody in a hole. It's just like awkward and like, you know.
You know how I would almost like to see it implemented is that the beginning of each game still had a kickoff. Like the beginning of the game and the halftime still had a kickoff, because it feels so ceremonial that you just like need to like let's have a kickoff.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm all on board to have that for like every other like score or change of like possession that would be a kickoff normally. Like 4th and 15. That sounds fucking awesome.
I said this
play football
about the kickoff at the beginning and the half and stuff, and I think that is a fair compromise, and it would be a good like transitionary way to do it at a minimum, you know. But maybe just keep it all together too, you know.
Totally.
There's one more point I was going to make about it, but I forget. Like coaches. Like if you're a coach and you eliminate kickoff and just replace it with punts, well, that's like one less thing you have to worry about each week.
Right.
Like you don't have to practice kickoff. You don't have to practice kickoff return. You just practice your normal punt return team, and it's like saves you a whole lot of time to like do other more exciting football plays, or to have better fake punts, or to like whatever, you know, instead of like your kicker in the corner practicing onside kicks for some reason, you know.
And I also wonder what it does from like a roster perspective. Like I don't know how many guys you're keeping just for kickoff, if anyone at all. You know, maybe you keep on like an extra linebacker in today's world because you need them for kickoff, like a body to be there, and maybe you don't need that, and that frees up like a someone on the offensive side of the ball, like a wide receiver. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, free up some roster. You're probably right. You know, maybe you don't need so much duplication, or maybe you can get more guys in on defense, or you can do like what the Saints are doing with Taysom Hill and having that like kind of that dynamic player that plays quarterback sometimes, but also plays like everything else. You know,
for sure. Just give him the ball; he'll do something with it. Yeah, who knows?
He's fun. I like him.
He is super fun.
So if you were on like the NFL commission, would you give me a vote yes on that, or would you go with the compromise to keep?
I go with the compromise. You keep the kickoff, because like, I think there'd be too many people that are confused. If the game started right away, they'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like,
that makes sense actually. Yeah, kick it off at the beginning. It's like
And I would pick for kickoff at the beginning and the beginning of the first and beginning of the third quarter.
Right.
But I would compromise again on that and just have it just be the first quarter. I think that would just like the game opener.
You probably had to match it with the half though, because of like.
Oh yeah, you're right. Getting the ball back.
Getting the ball, whatever. But either way, I think it'd be cool. I make fun of kickoffs every time I'm like with somebody watching football. I'm like, watch how lame this play is. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, what's stupid? Watch what's gonna happen. Everyone's gonna run out of the field. Nothing's gonna happen, guaranteed. And it's exactly what happens.
I don't know if you watched the Bills playoff game, but
I did.
They almost
beginning, but I caught the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean the beginning of the third quarter, unclear if it was a touchdown or not a touchdown when the guy gave up the ball. But if I'm taking my Bills hat off, it was not a touchdown. It was clearly gave himself up. Did you see that where he like they ruled a touchdown on the field initially because the player that was receiving the ball on the Houston Texans didn't fair catch it, didn't kneel down. He just dropped the ball. When the ref backed away and the Bills picked it up.
I did see that.
Touchdown.
It was the very beginning of the half, right?
Yeah.
I did see that.
But it was super fucked up because like the rules state that it has to go to review if it was a touchdown. You can't just have like a common sense rule like they said. It has to go like up to the booth. I don't know. It's all like the nitpicky rules.
Yeah.
And anyways, like the Buffalo Bills would not have been able to beat the Kansas City Chiefs last week.
Yeah.
They were just on fire after being down 24-0. So.
Yeah, that was a fun game too.
For sure.
All right. I have at least one more question here for you. Do you have anything for me before I ask you one more question? We get into one more thing?
No, man. Let's hear it.
So we got the 2020 election here coming up for president. I watched the debate last night, the Democratic debate. Before I give my opinions on things, like where do you sit with all that? Of those players, who do you like? Do you like Mr. Trump? Do you like any of those? Yeah. Do you like any of those Democratic players, or somebody else that you like, or kind of what's your general sense on that right now?
So my general sense is like I'm burned out. Like there's so many candidates, and I've been like so angry politically about the whole process for so long that I'm just like kind of fed up with it, that I don't even want to establish a stake in the ground. If I'm being 100% honest, like I really like a lot of the policies that. I mean, I was like a Bernie fan in 2016. I still like appreciate what he's doing. I think that he hasn't the thing I love about Bernie is that he's been the same person since like 1972, like whenever he first like got into office. And I love that. Like he's super genuine, he means really well, and he's proved that he has good intentions. Like, so he has a lot of inherent trust with me. I think that politics being politics, like you have to like be able to, I thought you had to at least be able to like work with the other party. But I think Trump has just showed you that you don't really need to. You can just do whatever the fuck you want to. Yeah. And I just really frustrates me that there's no like decorum left. It's not like a meeting of the minds that we're gonna talk. It's just like, well, this is what we're fucking doing. Excuse me. I think that Biden is too old and too white and too willing to compromise, and he'll just like roll over to the Republicans and just compromise for the sake of compromising, when the Republicans don't have that strategy anymore. The Republicans have the strategy of, this is a line in the sand, this is what we're going to do, which is really frustrating to me, because I agree with Biden that we need to be able to communicate the issue. It's like, let's debate this. Like, let's have like let's not, pander to our base. Let's not do X, Y, and Z. Let's just like address the issue. Let's be very pragmatic about this. I really like Elizabeth Warren. I think she's been a great legislator, and like what she's been able to do for the state of Massachusetts has been like unreal. I don't know if she would beat Donald Trump, and that's kind of like, unfortunately, one of the number one things that I'm worried about is just getting Trump out of office.
Yeah.
And it's like no offense to her, and like I'm just like being super honest and candid about the situation, is I don't think she would sway any conservative voters. Just the way that the far right has positioned her is just, this crazy like woman that pretends she's Native American. That's the narrative that they want to say. And so, for better or for worse, those people that are on like the far right or like whatever it is, they might be more willing to pick up like a standard white dude like Pete Buttigieg, even though he's gay, ex-military. It's all these like interesting dynamics. I love meeting some Andrew Yang. Like he's got some really good like analytical policy, and like that's what we need. Is like we needed someone to like approach from an analytical perspective. But I kind of like say all the candidates like where I could see them is like I haven't put any of like my political I still have like my political coins just waiting. Like if a primary happened today, I don't know where I would stand. I'd have to like really start like ramping up research just because like I almost want that decision to be made for me and the Democrats to get it all together and then put everything that I can into behind that candidate. But if I had to like prioritize right now, it would probably be Bernie, Buttigieg, Warren, Yang, Biden. Yeah, I think that's.
Run back one more time. That was a good ranking. I want to get that ranking one more time. Hit me one more time with that.
It would be Bernie, Buttigieg, Warren, Yang, Biden, and then Mike Bloomberg. Like all those fucking ads that I see during football. I want to watch football, not your goddamn ads, Mike Bloomberg.
He must be spending some money.
He's dropping some coins.
Yeah.
But that's where I stand. But like, I don't like. I've been so burned out. Like, I don't have a huge like. I'm not going to be religious about like any candidate that gets picked.
Yeah. So, like I said, I watched the debate last night. I really like tried to watch it with like a really open mind because I haven't decided yet like who of these people that I like the best or like the least. Like I legitimately was, obviously we all have our biases, right? But I was really trying to watch it with an open mind. And a couple things I noticed, like one, they all seem like it would be a dramatic improvement over our existing situation. So that's good. It doesn't seem like there's like a real loss there, where like anybody was like, okay, like I would take Trump over this person. Like I didn't feel that about any of them at this point, so that's good, I would say. The next thing I would say is they all seem pretty strong. I mean, like it's not really enough time in the debate to like really get in. That's why, I think this podcast format is just way better to like let things breathe and like really think on the go and like rather than like cramming everything out in 45 seconds as much as you could possibly say.
Right.
You off in the middle of what you're saying, But I guess that's kind of the medium is the message, right? It's kind of what you're forced to do there, unfortunately. But another thing that I noticed is the media seems super, super biased against Bernie. Like the way everything's structured, the way the questions get asked to him. Like I felt like at times when they were asking him questions that it was like a lawyer like leading the witness. Like they would like basically the way that they phrased the question, he was almost like, is this real? Like, is this real life? Like, what is even going on?
Yeah.
Which, to me, reading through the lines, it communicates to me that like he's the one that they don't want to win. They'd take any of those five over him.
Totally.
Which everything else aside makes me like him the most.
Yeah.
Like if that's the data that I'm getting is that like you guys are against him, well I'm for him then.
For sure. If that's the antidote, to this poison that we're in right now, that's probably what we need. And I know I feel the same way. Like I didn't watch the debates, but I on Twitter and on Reddit, that was the sentiment that I got was that Bernie was getting these either softball questions or just like, hey, what do you think about? Oh yeah, you think about this, don't you? It's like stop fucking leading the witness.
Yes. And so that was a big thing that I noticed is like just really it seems like they're stacking the deck against them, and they are. I mean, it was proven that they did it last time, Yeah. So it's no shocker that they're going to run back the same playbook, which would be really disappointing if they do that and it cost them the real election. That would be really disappointing. The other thing that I really noticed is like the questions that are asked and the order in which they're asked communicates like a broader thing, which is like, what are our priorities? You know? And like the first thing they're asking about was like Iran and like war. They said Iran and Afghanistan and Iraq and 9/11. Like in the first 5 minutes, they must have said all those words 20 times. You know?
Yeah.
Like that's the priority. You know, that's what they want. That's like what it's CNN, so like shocker that like, you know, everyone's pro war. You know, at least those people, it seems like, and
so fucked up.
That's frustrating too, because like Bernie wants to talk about like you said, that there's like 500,000 people homeless and that our planet's on fire and nobody has not nobody.
Yeah.
You know, the medical industry is completely out of control. You know,
you're going to pay $400 for insulin, versus you were paying $3
right
2 years ago or 30 years ago, whatever.
And they all want to talk about Iraq or Iran, you know, and back to what we said before. I forget what we were talking about before, but it's like when I said it's like strategically necessary. I forget what we were saying, but I noticed this too. Is like you can't be soft on like terrorism and win.
Mm-hmm.
Like it seems like it's a strategic blunder to come off soft on terrorism. So if you're like anti-war and they can like twist that to say like you're basically a terrorist is like how they twist it, you know? And it's disappointing that like we're caught in this trap that like if you come off soft at all, you're not going to win. Like you can win your local elections, you can win your state, you can win this, that, but you can't win the big seat if you're going to come off soft on anything related to the military, you know? And
totally.
I'm not saying that's good or bad or indifferent. I'm just saying that it really communicates like where we're at and like the puzzle that these politicians kind of have to maneuver themselves through, you know?
For sure.
Because he's certainly not our strongest candidate when it comes to military, you know, or like willingness to be the bad guy or whatever, which like I think that like wins some people over is like not being soft, you know, and like
totally.
Especially in the red states and the rural areas and like those types of people, like that's something that they value, you know, when it comes to like competing values, that's something that's important to them, you know?
For sure.
So it's really tricky, but Bernie Buttigieg might be a good team.
It could be interesting. I think it's too white though. It's too white. It's too male.
They're all white though. I mean,
I know.
I mean, I'm white and male, so like it's hard for me to hate white men too much, you know?
For sure. No, I definitely feel you. I just think from like, I feel like if Bernie gets elected, if Bernie makes the primary or any like male does, they're going to try to pair like a female VP. Sure. I don't know who that person would be, but I think that's what the DNC would do. Mm-hmm. Like right or wrong. And like I would love to see like a female president. Like, it's really unfortunate what happened with like Hillary and like back to the whole like Electoral College thing. Like someone that gets the most fucking votes doesn't get into the office is kind of fucking crazy.
Insane.
And maybe we keep the Electoral College and like we tweak it a little bit so like there's like it's more granular by adding more votes, but it's still kind of bullshit. Because like it's just crazy to me that happens. You know, it's like granted like something. So I have like most of my family in like upstate New York, they voted for Trump. Like one, like my mom is one of 13. I would say like most of my family, like most of her brothers and sisters voted for Trump. And like living with them and talking with them gives you a super interesting perspective on like why that would happen. And I think a huge part of it is that people in rural areas or just like non-urban areas that just aren't densely urban have been left behind, like super far behind. Like they have not recovered from 2008 recession, and they're voting with their wallets. They're like, whatever is happening now is like not working for me. All this globalism talk has not affected my paycheck, but in reality, it's technology that's affecting that. It's like, you know, AI has created jobs. Like you can't walk into the manufacturing line and make a middle-class wage anymore. So that's why like I'm kind of like a little bit hesitant with like stuff like Electoral College in the Senate, because it gives a voice to those people that are potentially ignored. And I think there's a huge divide that I think the left is ignoring a little bit with just the people that like, I wish like I remember like reading something that, the Republicans after Obama won in 2008, they immediately put together like a huge study on like why we lost and like all these things into it. And when the Democrats lost to Trump, like nothing of that happened. And I would have loved to see some action of like really do a root cause analysis and like think hard on like, what we need to do, or what the Democrats need to do to address that.
Mm-hmm.
But because I think like, like the beauty of like how the government, like for better or for worse, like two-party system is like the check and balance of it. But what it comes down to, like for your perspective and our perspective, is like the people. It's like give the power back to the people. Like what does what's best for everyone? And so you don't have like this like staunch like fighting into like this whole gap in the middle, and everyone, like even people like me that are like more politically inclined are just like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I just like anyone but this person.
Yeah, just wears you out, And
totally.
And I have friends and family members that are pro-Trump and voted for Trump too. So I get it. I have those same conversations, and I understand, and like you said, some of it's technology, they're upset, but I feel like their anger is misplaced. Like their hatred. Yeah. Sometimes it's hatred, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's hatred, but I feel like it's misplaced. They totally think it's, I don't know, they blame Obama or they blame like liberal snowflakes, and it's like that's not really what it is,
Yeah, or immigrants that are coming in, but it's not an immigrant that's coming in. It's just, technology's moving, and someone else had a different skill set that you didn't have. So it's like if you had that skill set, you'd be fine. Which I think like the number one thing the U.S. needs to work on is the education system. Like, like why do we have the industrial style education where we just are creating compliant people? We need creative thinkers. We need people that are adapted to technology, all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And then I think the left makes it worse when they mistake like the pro-Trump people's like anger or their take on things for stupidity. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are stupid. I'm not going to say that they're, but it's totally. They're all stupid, and maybe most of them aren't stupid. They're just they have a completely different like life and economy than some of the other people. And I think it's like that lack of understanding just furthers the divide too.
Definitely.
But back to the Electoral College thing, I think it just seems like it discourages voting too, because there's so many states that like always go whatever color that they go.
Right.
So if you're in one of those states, the chances of it going the other color is like basically zero. So like, what are you even bothering to vote for? Like, your incentive is like not there. Your vote doesn't matter. Mathematically speaking, it's not going to matter. If your state's always gone red and is probably going to go red, what good is it to you for you to show up and go blue or red? It doesn't matter. Mathematically, It doesn't matter. And you can say that about any individual state, unless they're like a purple state. If it's like a swing state, then yes, your vote matters a lot.
For sure. Your Pennsylvanias, your Floridas, all that. Yeah.
So it's like weird that you end up with like these specific states holding all the power in effect,
For sure. Like someone that lives in like Erie, Pennsylvania versus Erie County, New York, their vote is like exponentially more valuable, which is it's crazy,
Mm-hmm. And it's weird because that shouldn't be that way, right? Probably not.
No.
If you were going to design the game, like if you had a fresh start, you probably wouldn't structure it that way unless you were trying to stack the deck for some reason.
For sure.
And then on top of all of that, because it's the number of electoral votes is associated with the number of seats in Congress, right? House plus Senate plus DC, I guess, if I remember correctly. Like it's not, because you're doing plus the Senate, it's not mathematically equal.
Right.
Like the amount, even though like Wyoming, for example, like always goes red probably, their vote is like mathematically worth more than someone in California's per person,
Totally.
Which that's not right.
You become like fractional votes.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and like each person, that'd be super interesting. Is like, what is a fractional vote for every single person,
Mm-hmm.
and do that like state by state. I'm sure like, even like county by county, you get like a crazy.
It's significant, you know.
Totally.
And that's resulted in what, 3 times I think in the last 20 years where it's at least twice, but it might be 3 times where the person who won the popular vote didn't win the Electoral College, you know? And it's like football, back to football. Like, how many times are you going to let like somebody run the clock out and with intentional penalties getting towards the end of the 5th quarter before you realize like we got to change this rule because it's stupid.
Right.
You know? 3 times. That's good enough for me.
For sure. Fool me once.
Yeah.
Shame on me. Fool me twice. Won't get fooled again.
Can't get fooled again. Fool me 3 times. You're playing with yourself.
Shame on me.
Shame on me again. Yeah. So I'm almost fresh out. You got anything else for me, buddy?
No, man. This is like really good to catch up. Really good to like hear what you're doing and like, you know, talk about all this stuff. It's like really nice to have like, I've been like just out of it with like work and all this stuff. Just life going too crazy, but these are important things that I miss talking about. So
yeah. And it's been great to have this. A lot of people deal with post-trail depression after getting off the trail because like the quote unquote real world is it's hard, man. It's hard. It's harder than hiking up a goddamn mountain with 40 pounds on your back. It really is, you know. It is. So having this opportunity to connect with people one-on-one and talk about ideas and check in with each other and, you know, come up with a shared vision has been really like a good antidote to that. And I'm looking forward to kind of keeping it rolling, you know?
For sure, man. Mm-hmm. Well, I look forward to like listen to more podcasts and like see what's going on, man. Get the ESW OG ESW on here.
Bring them in. I'm gonna bring them in all one at a time. I'm gonna get them all slowly but surely. Yeah. Cool, right, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate your time. Nothing but love and respect for you, my brother.
Right. Same back to you, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care of yourself.
All right.
Peace.
Later.